The immigration officer's pen clicked 3 times against the metal desk. Adaeze counted each click, her heart hammering in rhythm with the sound. Across from her, Min-jun's face remained perfectly calm, his hand resting on the table between them, close enough to touch, but carefully not touching. The fluorescent lights above them hummed, casting harsh shadows across the small interrogation room. "Mrs. Park," the officer said, her voice sharp as glass, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Where exactly did your husband propose to you?" Adaeze's mouth went dry. They'd rehearsed this. She knew the answer. Brooklyn Bridge, sunset, October 15th. But under the officer's cold gaze, her mind blanked completely. The words stuck in her throat like stones. Min-jun's finger twitched on the table, once, twice, their signal. "The Brooklyn Bridge," Adaeze managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "At sunset, October 15th. He'd been acting strange all day, nervous. I thought he was coming down with something." The officer's eyes narrowed. "And what was he wearing?" They hadn't rehearsed clothing. Panic flashed hot and cold through Adaeze's chest. "A blue shirt," she said, then immediately second-guessed herself. "No, wait." "It was gray," Min-jun interrupted smoothly, his hand finally moving across the table to cover hers. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "A gray button-down, navy pants. You told me I looked like the October sky. Moody and beautiful, you said. I told you that was the corniest thing I'd ever heard." Adaeze's breath caught. He was covering for her mistake, but also, when had he started remembering details like that? Details they'd never rehearsed because they'd never happened. "And the ring," the officer pressed. "Describe it." "Simple platinum band," Min-jun said. "No diamond. Adaeze doesn't like flashy jewelry. She said diamonds fund conflict, and she couldn't wear one without thinking about the violence. So I had them custom make a band from recycled platinum instead." The officer made a note. Adaeze stared at Min-jun. That was completely made up. They didn't have an engagement ring at all. But somehow, the detail felt true. Felt like something he would have done, if any of this were real. "Mr. Park, does your wife have any scars or distinguishing marks?" Min-jun didn't hesitate. "Small scar on her left ankle. Childhood accident, stepped on broken glass running from her older brother. Appendectomy scar on her right side, about 4 inches long. She's self-conscious about it, but I tell her it's part of her story. And there's a small burn mark on her inner left wrist from last month when she grabbed a pot without thinking. I told her to be more careful. She told me to stop hovering." Every word was true. Every single detail. When had he noticed all of that? When had he memorized the geography of her body like it was a map he needed to navigate? The officer leaned back in her chair, studying them both. "You two are either the most convincing liars I've ever interviewed, or you're actually in love. I haven't decided which yet." She slid a document across the desk. "We're scheduling an unannounced home visit. 1 week from today. Evening hours. We'll be observing you in your natural environment. Any sign that this marriage is fraudulent, and I'll personally escort Mr. Park to the airport for immediate deportation. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Min-jun said. The officer stood, dismissing them. As they walked out of the building into the gray New York afternoon, Adaeze's legs felt like water. Min-jun's hand found the small of her back, steadying her, and she hated how natural it felt. Hated how much she wanted to lean into that touch and never pull away. "That was close," she whispered once they were in his car. Too close. His jaw was tight, hands gripping the steering wheel. "We need to be more prepared. One mistake and this whole thing falls apart." Maybe this whole thing should fall apart. Maybe we're in over our heads. He turned to look at her then. Really look at her. And something in his dark eyes made her chest ache. "Are you saying you want out?" "I'm saying I don't know if I can keep lying." "Then don't lie. Just be with me. Let whatever happens happen naturally. The best lies are the ones that are almost true." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Immigration. They both tensed. "They want individual interviews," he said, reading the message. Tomorrow, separate rooms. They're going to try to catch us in inconsistencies. Adaeze closed her eyes. How did we get here? You want the honest answer? Or the version that lets us both sleep tonight? Tell me how this started. All of it, from the beginning. Min-jun pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward the penthouse they now shared, and began to tell her a story. Their story. The one that had started 3 months ago with desperation and money and lies, and had somehow twisted into something far more complicated. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now because this story is about to get so much messier. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. 3 months earlier, Adaeze sat in her Brooklyn studio apartment, surrounded by the evidence of her life falling apart. Rejection letters from every scholarship she'd applied for. Overdue bills stacked like accusations on her tiny desk. An email from Columbia University glowing on her laptop screen. Student account hold. Immediate payment required. $18,500. She'd been in America for 5 years, chasing a PhD in public health that was supposed to change everything. The research she was doing on healthcare accessibility in developing nations could save lives, could transform systems, could make her mother's sacrifices mean something. But none of that mattered if she couldn't pay her tuition, if she got evicted before she could finish her dissertation, if she had to go home to Nigeria and admit that she'd failed. Her phone rang. Mama. Ada, my dear, how are you? Did the money I sent arrive for Grandma's surgery? Adaeze's throat tightened. Her mother had sent $500, money she couldn't afford to spare, for Grandma's emergency surgery. $500 that should have gone toward rent. But Adaeze had immediately transferred it to Nigeria because what else could she do? Let her grandmother die because she was too proud to accept help. Yes, Mama. I sent it to the hospital. Grandma's surgery is scheduled for next week. Thank God. And your studies? You're defending your dissertation soon? Soon, Mama. Very soon. The lie tasted like metal in her mouth. We're so proud of you, Ada. First person in our family to get a doctorate. Your father would have been so proud. After hanging up, Adaeze pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. She couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't keep pretending everything was fine while her entire world crumbled. She was out of options, out of time, out of hope. Her best friend Kioma video called 10 minutes later, took one look at Adaeze's face, and said, "What happened?" "I'm dropping out. I can't afford next semester. I'm done." "No, absolutely not. We'll figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out. I've applied for every scholarship, every loan, every grant in this country. I've been working 3 side jobs and it's still not enough. I'm tapped out, Chi. I'm finished." Kioma bit her lip, hesitating in that way that meant she was about to suggest something Adaeze wouldn't like. "There is one option, but you're going to hate it. I'm already living in a studio the size of a closet and eating ramen for every meal. How much worse could it get? A friend of mine needs help. His name is Min-jun Park. He's Korean, runs some kind of tech consulting business. Very wealthy, very private, and very desperate for a green card." Adaeze's stomach dropped. "No, absolutely not. Hear me out. You're talking about marriage fraud. That's a federal crime, Chi. 5 years in prison. Only if you get caught. And Min-jun is meticulous. He's not some random guy trying to scam the system. He's legitimately successful. He just needs the green card to stay in the country. His visa is expiring and he has very specific reasons for not wanting to return to Korea." "What reasons?" "That's for him to tell you. But Ada, he's offering $50,000. 25 up front, 25 when he gets the green card. 50,000 would solve all your problems." $50,000. Adaeze's entire body went cold and hot at the same time. 50,000 would pay her tuition with room to spare, would clear her debts, would let her finish her research and actually make a difference in the world instead of crawling back home in defeat. "It's wrong," she whispered. "Is it? He needs help. You need help. You'd be helping each other. It's not like you'd be stealing from anyone or hurting anyone. Just 2 people making a mutually beneficial agreement. For 1 year of my life. 12 to 18 months, max. Then you divorce quietly, you get your degree, he gets to stay in America, and everyone wins. Think about it, Ada. What do you have to lose? Everything, Adaeze thought. Or nothing, because she'd already lost everything that mattered except her last shred of integrity. And apparently, she could sell that for $50,000. Set up a meeting, she heard herself say. I'll hear him out. That's all I'm promising. 2 days later, she sat in a Manhattan law office that screamed money, wearing her best interview suit that screamed broke grad student, feeling completely out of place. The receptionist offered her water in a crystal glass. The leather chairs probably cost more than her rent. Everything about this place made her want to run. Then Min-jun Park walked in. He was younger than she expected, early 30s maybe, and more handsome than anyone had the right to be. Sharp cheekbones, dark intelligent eyes, perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile, just stood there studying her like she was a business acquisition he was considering. Kioma vouched for you, he said without preamble. His English was flawless, accent barely noticeable. She says you're intelligent, discreet, and desperate, are you? Excuse me? Desperate. Are you desperate, Miss Okafor? Adaeze stood, her face burning. This was a mistake. I don't know what Kioma told you, but I'm not interested in being evaluated like livestock. Sit down. His voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. Please. She hesitated, pride warring with pragmatism. Pragmatism won. She sat. Min-jun finally sat across from her, folding his hands on the desk between them. I apologize. That was unnecessarily rude. Let me start over. I have a problem. You have a problem. I believe we can solve both problems through a mutually beneficial arrangement. Are you willing to hear my proposal? That depends on the proposal. I need a green card. My work visa expires in 6 weeks, and I have no legal pathway to renewal. Returning to Korea is not an option for personal reasons I'm not prepared to discuss. The simplest solution is marriage to a U.S. citizen. You are a U.S. citizen in significant financial distress. I'm prepared to pay you $50,000 in exchange for approximately 12 to 18 months of marriage. After I receive my green card, we divorce quietly. You get the money, I get to stay. Clean, simple, transactional. Illegal. Only if we're caught. Is that supposed to reassure me? It should, because I don't intend to get caught, which means I need a partner who's intelligent enough to maintain the fiction and desperate enough to commit fully. Kioma says you're both. She also says you're a terrible liar, which ironically makes you perfect for this. Immigration officers are trained to spot polished liars. They don't expect bad liars to be successful, which means they won't look as closely at you. Adaeze's hands trembled in her lap. She clasped them together to still them. Why me specifically? You could hire an actress, someone trained to lie convincingly. Actresses are performers. They excel at being watched. But this isn't a performance. It's a long-term commitment that requires consistency, not dramatics. You have something to lose. Real stakes. That makes you careful, motivated, trustworthy. He paused, then added more quietly. And Kioma says you're kind. That matters more than you'd think. I need someone I won't hate living with for a year. Living with? Obviously. Immigration will investigate. We'll need to cohabitate immediately after the marriage. Share an address, combine our lives in all verifiable ways. You'll move into my penthouse. We'll maintain separate bedrooms for privacy, but to the outside world, we'll appear to be a genuine couple. The reality of what he was proposing crashed over her like a wave. This wasn't just signing a paper. This was restructuring her entire existence around a lie. Living with a stranger. Pretending to love someone she didn't know. Risking everything for money. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. After that, I'll find someone else. He slid a folder across the desk. This contains the contract, information about the legal risks, and a certified check for $25,000. The money is yours to keep even if you decide not to proceed. Call it compensation for your time today. Adaeze stared at the check. $25,000, half her tuition, just for showing up to this meeting. Why would you give me money before I agree? Because I'm not a monster, Miss Okafor. Because Kioma told me about your grandmother's surgery and your eviction notice and your dissertation that stalled because you're working 3 jobs just to survive. Because sometimes people need help and I'm in a position to provide it. His expression softened fractionally. And because I need you to understand that I'm serious about this. I'm not playing games. This is business, but it's business that could change both our lives for the better. Take the money. Think about the offer. Call me tomorrow. He stood, the meeting clearly over. Adaeze grabbed the folder with shaking hands and somehow made it to the elevator, down to the street, onto the subway, back to her apartment before she let herself look at the check again. $25,000. Made out to her. Real. She called Kioma. He gave me money just for meeting with him. I told you he was serious. He wants me to move in with him immediately after the wedding. He wants to get married in 5 days, Chi. 5 days. So? You said you were out of options. Here's an option. It's fraud. It's survival. Look, I know this is scary. I know it's morally gray. But Ada, you're drowning. This man is offering you a life raft. Are you really going to refuse it because you're worried about the optics? Adaeze looked around her tiny apartment, at the eviction notice on her door, at the rejection letters on her desk, at the research that could save lives gathering dust because she couldn't afford to finish it. She called Min-jun. I'm in, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. I want the full contract reviewed by a lawyer of my choosing. I want ironclad guarantees about the divorce terms, and I want your promise that if I ever feel unsafe or want out, I can leave with no consequences. Agreed. Anything else? Yes. Why can't you go back to Korea? What are you running from? Long silence. Then, my father arranged my marriage before he died, to a woman I've never loved. If I return, my family will enforce that arrangement. Here, I'm free to live my own life. That's all you need to know. One more thing. If we're going to do this, if we're going to lie to everyone including the federal government, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll treat me like a human being. Not an acquisition, not a transaction. If we're going to live together, I need basic respect and kindness. Can you do that? Another pause. Yes, I can do that. Do we have an agreement, Miss Okafor? We have an agreement, Mr. Park. When do we get married? Tuesday, City Hall. Bring one friend as witness, pack lightly. You move in immediately after. That's 3 days away. Immigration will be suspicious if there's any delay between marriage and cohabitation. 3 days gives us just enough time to get the license and make this look spontaneous, like we couldn't wait to be together. After she hung up, Adaeze sat on her floor and cried. Not from sadness exactly, from relief and terror and the strange grief of selling a part of herself she'd never thought she'd sell. But when she deposited that check the next morning and watched her account balance transform from double digits to 5 figures, she knew she'd made her choice. There was no going back now. Drop a comment right now and tell me, would you marry a stranger for $50,000? Be honest, and hit that like button if you're already nervous about how this is going to end. The lawyer's office on Monday smelled like expensive cologne and leather. Min-jun's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Chen, laid out the prenuptial agreement disguised as a business contract. This is comprehensive, Sarah said, flipping through pages. In the event of divorce, which will occur between 12 and 18 months from now, all assets remain separate. Ms. Okafor receives her final payment of $25,000 upon Mr. Park's green card approval. Mr. Park retains all business interests and properties. No alimony, no claim to future earnings. It's as clean a separation as we can legally construct. Adaeze read every word. Her hands didn't shake anymore. She'd moved past fear into a kind of numb acceptance. Clause 7.3. Both parties agree to maintain the appearance of genuine romantic relationship for legal and social purposes only. Physical intimacy beyond what is necessary for public appearances is strictly prohibited. Clause 9.1. Emotional attachment is discouraged. This arrangement is professional in nature despite its personal implications. Emotional attachment is discouraged, Adaeze read aloud. That's an interesting way to put it. It's necessary, Min-jun said from across the table. Feelings complicate things, make people irrational. This works better if we both understand it's temporary. So we're roommates who happen to be legally married. Essentially, yes. What if one of us develops feelings anyway? What if we can't control that? Min-jun's expression hardened. Then we remember why we're doing this, remember what's at stake, and we wait it out until the arrangement ends. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. Then we make it simple. We maintain boundaries. We don't blur lines. We treat this like the business transaction it is. He slid a pen toward her. Sign if you agree. Walk away if you don't. But decide now. Adaeze thought about her grandmother, who'd never had access to proper health care because Nigerian hospitals were underfunded and inaccessible to poor families. Thought about her mother working 3 jobs to send her to America for opportunities that were now evaporating. Thought about the research sitting unfinished on her laptop. Research that could actually change systems and save lives if she could just finish her degree. She signed. Min-jun signed beneath her signature, and just like that, they were legally bound to this deception. Sarah notarized the documents, filed them away, and looked at them both with something almost like pity. I hope you know what you're doing, she said quietly. So do we, Adaeze replied. Tuesday morning dawned gray and cold, matching Adaeze's mood perfectly. She met Chioma and Min-jun at City Hall, where they'd be married by a clerk in a ceremony that would take approximately 10 minutes and mean absolutely nothing except as legal fiction. Min-jun's business partner Jin-woo was there too, a handsome Korean man about Min-jun's age who kept smirking like this whole situation was hilarious. You clean up well, Jin-woo said to Adaeze while they waited for their turn. Min-jun didn't mention you were this pretty. He just said you were desperate and convenient. He certainly has a way with compliments. Don't take it personally. Min-jun's terrible with emotional intelligence, brilliant with business, disaster with humans. You'll figure that out soon enough. The clerk called them up. They stood before her. Min-jun in an expensive charcoal suit. Adaeze in a simple cream dress she'd bought at a discount store for $30. Nothing about this felt like a wedding. It felt like a transaction at the DMV. Do you, Min-jun Park, take Adaeze Okafor to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was agreeing to a software update. Do you, Adaeze Okafor, take Min-jun Park to be your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at Min-jun, really looked at him. His jaw was tight, his eyes carefully blank. He was as uncomfortable as she was, she realized. Maybe more. This was his life he was gambling on a stranger. I do. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. They both froze. In all their planning, they hadn't discussed this part. Min-jun leaned in, his hand gentle on her elbow, and pressed his lips to hers for exactly 2 seconds. It was perfunctory, closed mouth, utterly devoid of feeling. It felt like signing another document. When he pulled back, his eyes were apologetic. Chioma and Jin-woo clapped politely. The clerk handed them their marriage certificate. And, just like that, Adaeze was Mrs. Park, for the next year at least. Congratulations, Chioma whispered, pulling her aside while Min-jun dealt with the paperwork. Are you okay? I have no idea what I'm feeling right now. That's probably healthy. Listen, if this gets weird, if he turns out to be a creep or if you need an out, you call me immediately. Promise? Promise. And Ada, try not to fall in love with him. I know he's handsome and rich and damaged in that attractive way. But remember why you're doing this. Get your money, get your degree, get out. Don't let this get complicated. Adaeze laughed, but it sounded hollow. Fall in love with him? Have you met the man? He has the emotional range of a tax form. I think I'm safe. But as Min-jun returned and placed his hand on her lower back to guide her out of City Hall, a gesture that felt oddly protective despite being completely performative, she felt a flutter of something in her chest that might have been nervousness or might have been the first hint that Kiyoma's warning was more necessary than either of them realized. Min-jun's penthouse was everything Adaeze expected, and nothing she was prepared for. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than a car, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used, everything chrome and marble in cold perfection. "Your room is down the hall," Min-jun said, not looking at her as he loosened his tie. "Second door on the left. Bathroom is shared, but there's a half bath attached to my room if you prefer privacy. Kitchen is obviously available whenever you want. I usually eat out or order in." "You don't cook." "I don't have time to cook." "That's sad." He finally looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. "Sad. Cooking is one of life's basic pleasures. You're missing out. I'll survive." But there was something softer in his voice now. "Your things are being delivered tomorrow. Until then, there's clothes in the closet in your room that should fit. I had my assistant estimate your size. If they don't fit, we'll get you new ones. You bought me clothes. You'll need appropriate outfits for when we go out together. We need to be seen as a couple. That requires a certain level of presentation." Of course. It always came back to the performance. The lie. Adaeze found her room, barely smaller than her entire previous apartment, and sat on the edge of the bed that was bigger and softer than anything she'd ever slept on. Through the window, she could see the city glittering like scattered diamonds. This was her life now. Living in luxury with a stranger, pretending to be his wife, lying to everyone. She called her mother. "Mama, I have news! I got married!" Her mother's shriek was so loud Adaeze had to hold the phone away from her ear. "Married? Ada, when? To who? Why didn't you tell us?" "It happened fast, Mama. His name is Min-jun. He's Korean. We've been seeing each other quietly and we just decided to make it official." "Korean? Ada, your father would have... Well, he would have wanted to meet him first. But if you're happy, then we're happy. When will you come home so we can meet him?" "Soon, Mama. I promise. We're just getting settled first." After she hung up, guilt sat heavy in her stomach. Another lie. So many lies. How many could she tell before she forgot what the truth even was? That night, she and Min-jun ate takeout at opposite ends of his massive dining table. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. The clink of chopsticks against containers echoed too loudly. "So," Adaeze tried, "how was your day?" "Fine. Just fine? What do you want me to say? It was a day. I worked. I dealt with clients. I came home. Same as every day. Do you have hobbies? Things you do for fun?" "Work is fun. That's not a hobby. It is for me." He set down his chopsticks, finally meeting her eyes. "Look, I appreciate that you're trying to make conversation, but we don't have to do this. We don't have to pretend to be friends when no one's watching. We're business partners, colleagues. We can coexist without forcing artificial intimacy." I wasn't trying to force anything. I was trying to be polite. Politeness is unnecessary when it's just us. Save your energy for when we're in public. He stood, taking his container to the kitchen. "I have work to do. Feel free to use the TV, the gym, whatever you want. Just try not to make too much noise after 10. I have early calls." He disappeared into his office, leaving Adaeze alone at the ridiculous table in the ridiculous apartment, feeling more isolated than she'd felt in her tiny studio. At least there, she'd been alone by choice. Here, she was alone by design, trapped in a marriage that wasn't really a marriage with a man who wasn't really her husband. This was going to be a very long year. Subscribe right now if you want to see how badly this goes wrong. Because trust me, it's about to get so much more complicated. And drop a in the comments if you think they're going to fall for each other. I'll tell you at the end if you're right. The first week passed in awkward silence. They circled each other like wary cats, hyper-aware of shared spaces and careful boundaries. Adaeze learned Min-jun's schedule. Up at 5:30, coffee at 6, out the door by 7, home at 8, work in his office until midnight. She learned he took his coffee black, that he only wore gray or black suits, that he rubbed his temples when he was stressed, that he sometimes stood by the living room window at 2 in the morning staring at the city like he was trying to figure out how he'd ended up here. She learned that despite his coldness, he was meticulous about small things. He replaced the orange juice before it ran out. He adjusted the thermostat when he noticed she was cold. He left post-it notes on things. Mail came. Repairman coming Tuesday. Ordered groceries, because apparently his communication style extended to office supplies. And Min-jun, whether he admitted it or not, was learning her too. He started keeping honey in the house because she put it in her tea. He moved his late-night calls to his bedroom so she could sleep. He bought plantains after she mentioned missing Nigerian food, even though he had no idea what to do with them. They were dancing around each other, learning the steps without acknowledging the music. On Friday, Jin-woo came over for what he called a quality check. Immigration could show up anytime, he said, watching them carefully. Let's see how convincing you are. Min-jun, put your arm around her. Min-jun draped his arm across Adaeze's shoulders like he was hanging up a coat. Stiff, unnatural, completely unconvincing. Jesus Christ, Jin-woo muttered. You look like hostages forced to pose for a ransom photo. Try again. Adaeze, lean into him. Min-jun, relax your shoulders. You're supposed to be in love, not enduring a dental procedure. They tried again. It was slightly better but still wooden. Talk to me about your relationship, Jin-woo said. Where did you meet? Columbia Library, Adaeze recited. Min-jun was donating Korean medical journals to the international collection. Wrong, Min-jun corrected. Korean medical journals and historical texts about traditional medicine. Specificity matters. Does it really? Immigration officers are trained to catch vague answers. Yes, it matters. They drilled for 2 hours. First date, first kiss, her parents' names, his parents, their proposal story, why they got married so quickly, what they loved about each other, every detail rehearsed, practiced, memorized. You're both terrible at this. Jin-woo finally said, the facts are fine, but you have zero chemistry. No spark. Nothing that makes me believe you even like each other, let alone love each other enough to get married. We're working on it. Min-jun said tightly. Work faster. Immigration has a 73% fraud detection rate. They're good at spotting fake marriages. You need to be perfect. Jin-woo stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. You need to practice physical affection, casual touching, hand-holding, kisses on the forehead, the kind of stuff couples do without thinking. Right now, you both flinch when you touch each other. That's a problem. After Jin-woo left, Min-jun turned to Adaeze. He's right. We need to practice. Practice touching each other. Practice making it look natural. He held out his hand. Come here. She took his hand. It was warm, slightly calloused in a way that surprised her. She'd expected his hands to be soft, pampered, but there were calluses on his fingers like he built things or played an instrument or had some hidden life she knew nothing about. You're holding your breath, he said. I'm nervous. Don't be. It's just me. That's the problem. I don't know you. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand. The gesture was so gentle, it made her chest ache. Then let's fix that. Tell me something about yourself, something real. Like what? Anything. Something you've never told anyone. A secret. Adaeze thought about it. I'm terrified of failing. Not just school, everything. I'm terrified that I'll go through all of this and still not be good enough. That I'll let everyone down who believed in me. That's not a secret. That's just being human. What about you? What are you afraid of? His hand tensed in hers. Becoming my father. He was successful, respected, and completely alone. He built an empire, and had no one to share it with except the son he barely spoke to and the wife he barely noticed. "I'm afraid I'm already halfway there." The honesty in his voice surprised her. This was the first real thing he'd said to her since they met. "You're not your father," she said quietly. "You're here, aren't you? Trying." That's more than he did. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "We should practice," he said again, but his voice was softer now. They spent the next hour practicing casual touches, his hand on her lower back as they walked through the apartment, her fixing his collar, him tucking her hair behind her ear, her leaning against him while they sat on the couch. Each touch felt choreographed, artificial, wrong, until it didn't. Until somewhere in the middle of the 10th or 15th or 20th repetition, Adaeze's hand on his chest felt less like a performance and more like curiosity. Until Min-jun's fingers in her hair felt less like staging and more like he wanted to touch her. Until they were standing too close in the kitchen, practicing spontaneous affection, and the air between them felt charged with something that wasn't acting at all. "This is better," Min-jun said, but his voice was rough. "Yeah," Adaeze whispered. "Better." They stood there, inches apart, neither moving closer but neither moving away. His eyes dropped to her lips, her hand fisted in his shirt. For a moment, she thought he might actually kiss her. Really kiss her, not the performance from City Hall. His phone buzzed. The moment shattered. "I should get that," he said, stepping back. "Right, of course." But as he walked away, Adaeze's heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with practicing lies and everything to do with the terrifying realization that maybe Kioma had been right to warn her. Maybe this was going to get complicated after all. That night, lying in her massive bed in her temporary room, Adaeze stared at the ceiling and tried to catalog what she knew about Min-jun Park. He was methodical, private, kind in ways he didn't want anyone to notice, scared of becoming his father, good at building walls and terrible at letting people in. And when he touched her, even fake touches for immigration's benefit, her skin felt electric in a way that had nothing to do with their contract. She was in trouble. She knew it. And she had no idea what to do about it. Down the hall, Min-jun sat at his desk, pretending to work while his mind replayed the moment in the kitchen when he'd almost kissed Adaeze. Really kissed her. Not because they were practicing or because someone was watching, but because she'd looked up at him with those impossibly expressive eyes, and he'd forgotten for a second why this was supposed to be fake. Forgotten that she was here for money, and he was here for a green card, and none of this was real. Except it was starting to feel real. The way she hummed while cooking. The way she left sticky notes responding to his sticky notes. Little conversations in yellow squares. The way she'd looked at him when he admitted his fear about becoming his father. Like she saw something in him worth saving. He'd hired her because she was convenient. Because she needed money and he needed documentation and it was supposed to be simple. But Adaeze Okafor was turning out to be anything but simple, and Min-jun was starting to suspect he'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. The next 2 weeks fell into a routine that felt almost domestic. Adaeze started cooking dinner most nights because Min-jun's diet of expensive takeout was going to give him a heart attack before he turned 40. He protested at first. "You don't have to do that. I can order something. You're not my maid." But she noticed he always showed up in the kitchen right at 6:30 when she started cooking. Noticed he set the table without being asked. Noticed he always complimented the food, even when she burned the rice or over-seasoned the stew. "This is good," he said one night, his second helping of jollof rice already half gone. "Really good." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I haven't had a home-cooked meal in a long time." "How long?" He was quiet for a moment, fork suspended halfway to his mouth. 10 years, since my mother died." The pain in his voice made her chest tight. "What was she like?" "Warm. Everything my father wasn't. He was all business, all duty, all expectations. She was the one who made our house feel like a home. She painted, played piano, sang off-key while she cooked. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. She would have liked you. You remind me of her a little. The way you move through spaces like you're trying to make them better just by being there. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. I say nice things. You say transactional things. This was nice. Min-jun looked at her across the table, and something passed between them. Something real. Something that made the air feel thinner. I can cook more often, Adaeze said quietly. If you want. It's not part of our agreement, but I like cooking, and you clearly like eating, so I'd like that, thank you. From that night on, dinner became their time. The 1 hour where they weren't practicing for immigration or maintaining careful distance. They talked about everything and nothing. Her research on healthcare accessibility, his work restructuring failing companies, her family in Nigeria, his complicated relationship with his late parents, her dreams of changing systems, his fear of being trapped by them. They learned each other's rhythms. She discovered he was funny in a dry, understated way that snuck up on you. He discovered she laughed with her whole body, head thrown back, completely unself-conscious. She learned he was secretly sentimental, keeping his mother's paintings in his office even though they clashed with his minimalist aesthetic. He learned she was fiercely protective of the people she loved, working herself to exhaustion, sending money home while barely eating. You can't save everyone, he told her one night after she'd spent an hour on the phone with her mother, promising everything was fine while quietly crying. I can try. At what cost? You're running yourself into the ground. That's not your problem. Adaeze. He said her name like a reprimand and a caress at once. You're my wife. Even if it's fake, even if it's temporary. While you're here, your problems are my problems. Let me help. You've already helped. You're paying me $50,000 to marry you. That's more help than anyone's ever given me. That's not help. That's a business transaction. I'm talking about actually helping. What do you need? She wanted to say nothing, wanted to maintain her pride and independence. But she was so tired of carrying everything alone. My grandmother needs monthly medication. It costs about $300. I've been sending it, but this month I'm short, and I don't know how. Done. Give me the details. I'll handle it. Min-jun? No, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. And before you argue, remember that immigration might check our finances. A husband supporting his wife's family looks good. This helps both of us. But the gentle way he said it told her it wasn't really about immigration at all. 2 days later, her mother called crying. Someone had paid for an entire year of grandma's medication in advance. Anonymous donor, the hospital said. But Adaeze knew. She found Min-jun in his office that night and didn't say anything, just hugged him. He froze for a second. Then his arms came around her, and they stood there in the doorway while the city lights glittered through the windows and the boundaries between real and fake blurred a little more. The first immigration surprise came on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m., pounding on the door, official voices. Immigration services, open up! Adaeze's eyes flew open. She was in her room. Min-jun was in his room. Separate bedrooms. Immigration couldn't see separate bedrooms. She ran to his door, burst in without knocking. He was already out of bed, pulling on a shirt, his hair disheveled in a way that would have been endearing if she wasn't panicking. They're here, she hissed. I know. He grabbed her hand, pulled her toward his bed. Get in. Mess up the sheets. Make it look like we both slept here. They dove under the covers just as the pounding got louder. Min-jun's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him. His body was warm, solid, and her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could feel it. Breathe, he whispered against her hair. We've got this. Coming! Adaeze yelled toward the door, her voice only slightly hysterical. They climbed out of bed, Min-jun in sleep pants and a t-shirt, Adaeze in her pajamas, and opened the door to find 2 immigration officers with badges and clipboards and expressions that suggested they'd seen this routine 1,000 times. Mr. and Mrs. Park, the female officer said. Routine compliance check. You weren't expecting us? We were sleeping, Min-jun said, his voice rough with manufactured sleepiness. It's Saturday. Of course. May we come in? They had no choice. The officers entered, immediately beginning their inspection. Eyes everywhere, noting everything. One toothbrush in the master bathroom. The officer made a note. Adaeze's clothes mostly in the guest room closet. Another note. 2 separate Netflix profiles. Note. The kitchen, only 1 coffee mug in the sink from this morning because they'd been too panicked to stage anything. Note. Officer Martinez, the woman in charge, turned to Adaeze with sharp eyes. Mrs. Park, your belongings seem to be distributed oddly. Do you usually sleep in the guest room? Think. Think fast. I've been sick, Adaeze said. Bad cold. Didn't want to keep Min-jun up with my coughing. How long have you been sick? About a week. You seem fine now. Antibiotics. Finally kicked in yesterday. The officer's expression suggested she didn't believe a word. Tell me about your morning routine. This they'd rehearsed. Min-jun answered smoothly. I wake at 6. Make coffee. Adaeze sleeps until 7 usually. We have breakfast together before I leave for work. What does your wife eat for breakfast? Toast with honey. Orange juice. Sometimes fried plantain if she has time. She makes this thing with eggs and peppers. I don't know what it's called, but it's incredible. The specificity seemed to surprise the officer. These were real details, things he couldn't have known unless he actually lived with Adaeze and paid attention. Mrs. Park, what does your husband eat for breakfast? Black coffee. He usually skips food in the morning. Says he doesn't have an appetite until noon. Sometimes I force him to eat scrambled eggs because I'm worried about his blood sugar. She looked at Min-jun. You need to eat more. Yes, dear, he said with just enough dry humor that it felt real. His hand found hers, squeezed gently, a reassurance that they were okay. They were doing fine. Just keep going. Officer Martinez wasn't convinced. We'll be back in 2 weeks for a more thorough interview. Both of you, separate rooms. Be prepared to answer detailed questions about every aspect of your relationship. Any inconsistencies will result in immediate investigation and potential deportation proceedings. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Min-jun said. After they left, Adaeze collapsed on the couch, her legs shaking. That was too close. Way too close. Min-jun sat beside her, running his hands through his hair. We need to actually look like we live together. Share the bedroom. Combine our things. Make this more convincing. You want to sleep in the same bed? I'll take the floor, or we put a pillow between us. Whatever makes you comfortable. But we can't risk another surprise visit where we're obviously in separate rooms. This is getting complicated. This was always complicated. We're just now realizing how complicated. He turned to look at her. Are you having second thoughts? Because if you want out, now's the time, before this gets worse. Adaeze thought about her dissertation defense, scheduled for 2 months from now. Thought about her grandmother's medication paid for the year. Thought about how dinner with Min-jun had become her favorite part of the day. Thought about the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. No second thoughts, she said. We're in this together, right? Together, he agreed. That night, they shared a bedroom for the first time. Min-jun set up a sleeping bag on the floor despite Adaeze's protests. They lay in the darkness, both acutely aware of the other's breathing. Can't sleep? He asked after an hour. Can you? No. Silence. Then Adaeze said, This is ridiculous. The bed is huge. We can share without it being weird. You're going to wreck your back on the floor. The contract says, the contract didn't anticipate immigration showing up at 7 a.m. Things change. We adapt. Get in the bed, Min-jun. He hesitated, then climbed in, staying carefully on his side. Miles of mattress between them, both staring at the ceiling. Tell me something, Adaeze said into the darkness. Something true. Like what? Why do you really need this green card? The real reason. Not the arranged marriage story. I feel like there's more you're not saying. Long pause. She thought he wouldn't answer. Then, My father built a company in Korea, a pharmaceutical company that was supposed to be about helping people. But near the end, he was cutting corners, using substandard materials, bribing officials to look the other way. People got hurt, some died, and I was being groomed to take over, to continue his legacy, to be him. The arranged marriage was part of that. Merge two family companies, continue the dynasty. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't be him. So I came here, started over, built something clean. If I go back, they'll pull me into that world, and I'll become exactly what I'm afraid of becoming. You're not him, Adaeze said fiercely. You paid for my grandmother's medication without being asked. You make sure I eat breakfast. You're gentle with people even when you're trying to be cold. You're nothing like what you're describing. His hand found hers in the darkness. Held on. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me. They fell asleep like that, hands linked across the expanse of bed. And when Adaeze woke at 3 a.m., she found herself curled against Min-jun's chest, his arm around her waist, both of them having migrated toward each other in sleep. She should have moved away, should have returned to her side of the bed. But he was warm and solid, and sleeping peacefully for the first time since she'd known him, and she couldn't bring herself to disturb that. So she stayed, and told herself it didn't mean anything. Hit that like button right now if you think they're in trouble, because they absolutely are. And comment below, team, they should stay married, or team divorce and run. Let me know. The week before their official immigration interview was intense. They drilled every day, sometimes for hours. Where they met, when they knew they were in love, what they fought about, what made them laugh, their hopes for the future, whether they wanted children, every intimate detail of a relationship they'd never actually had. But something was changing. The rehearsed answers were starting to feel true. Min-jun described falling in love with her, and his voice held conviction. Adaeze talked about what she loved about him and realized she wasn't entirely lying. The boundary between performance and reality was dissolving. They fell into deeper routines. He started working from home more often just to be around her. She started bringing him coffee in his office, staying to talk about her research, finding that he actually understood her work and asked insightful questions. They watched movies together, argued about plot holes, fell asleep on the couch in tangled heaps, and woke up embarrassed but not quite willing to stop. One night, Jin-woo came over for another quality check. He watched them interact for 20 minutes, cooking together in the kitchen, the easy rhythm of passing ingredients, the way Adaeze automatically adjusted the heat when Min-jun wasn't looking, the way he taste-tested her food, and she read his expression to know if it needed more seasoning, the casual touches that weren't rehearsed anymore. Okay, Jin-woo said finally. I'm convinced. You two have either become exceptional liars or you're actually falling for each other. I genuinely can't tell which. We're just practicing, Min-jun said, but his hand was on Adaeze's lower back and he didn't move it. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Jin-woo grinned. I give it 2 more weeks before one of you cracks and admits this isn't fake anymore. After he left, Adaeze and Min-jun stood in the kitchen, the words hanging between them. He's wrong, Min-jun said, but he didn't sound certain. Completely wrong, Adaeze agreed, but she couldn't meet his eyes. This is still just an arrangement. Obviously, we're not actually falling for each other. That would be ridiculous. They stood there, lying to each other, lying to themselves, both knowing the truth, and both too scared to admit it. On Friday night, Min-jun had a business gala he needed to attend. Adaeze was his +1. He bought her a dress, deep emerald green that made her skin glow and fit like it had been designed for her body specifically. You look beautiful, he said when she emerged from her room, and the way he said it made her believe he meant it. You look very you, she replied, gesturing at his perfect tuxedo. At the gala, they played the perfect couple. His hand never left her, waist, back, arm. Possessive but gentle. Other business associates circled, curious about Min-jun's mysterious new wife. He introduced her with pride, not possession. Let her shine in conversations instead of talking over her. "Your wife is impressive," one man told Min-jun. "Public health research? That's meaningful work." "She's brilliant," Min-jun said, looking at Adaeze like he meant it. "She's going to change healthcare access for millions of people. I'm lucky she tolerates me." A drunk business rival approached, his words slurring. "Min-jun, convenient timing on this marriage. Right before your visa expired. Must be nice having a green card backup plan." The insult hung in the air. Adaeze felt Min-jun's entire body go rigid with anger. But before he could respond, she stepped forward. "Excuse me?" Her voice was ice. "Just saying, marrying an African woman right when you need papers. Looks suspicious. Looks like you're using her." "My husband married me because he loves me," Adaeze said, her voice cutting. "If you have a problem with that, if you have a problem with me being black and him being Korean and us choosing each other despite small-minded people like you, then that's your issue. Not ours. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have better things to do than listen to you embarrass yourself." She pulled Min-jun away before he could escalate. Outside on the balcony, they were both shaking with anger. "That asshole," Min-jun muttered. "Do people really think that? That you married me because I'm black and therefore less suspicious? Some people think anything outside their narrow worldview is a scheme. But Adaeze, I didn't marry you because of your race. I married you because you needed money and I needed a green card. The logistics don't change the fact that you're—" He stopped, struggling for words. "You're more than I expected, more than I deserved. And if I could go back and choose anyone in the world to do this with, I'd choose you again. Not for convenience, not for optics, because you're you." Her breath caught. "Min-jun?" His phone buzzed. "Immigration." The moment shattered. "They want us Monday morning, 8 a.m. This is it." The dread that had been building all month crystallized into ice in her stomach. "Are we ready?" "I don't know." Sunday they drilled until they were both exhausted. Every question, every answer, every detail of their fabricated relationship. But between the drilling, something else was happening. They were fighting. Real fighting, about dishes, about his workaholic tendencies, about her habit of leaving her research papers everywhere, about stupid petty things that couples fought about because they were living together and getting on each other's nerves, and underneath the fighting was the unspoken question neither would ask. What are we actually doing here? What is this becoming? "You never put things away," Adaeze snapped. "Your coffee mug sits in the sink for days. At least I don't colonize the entire living room with my work. There are papers on every surface. Those papers are important. I'm trying to finish my dissertation. And I'm trying to keep my company from imploding while also preparing to lie to federal officers. Forgive me if I forget to wash a mug." They stood there glaring at each other, both breathing hard, and then suddenly they were laughing. The absurdity of it, fighting about dishes while their entire future hung in the balance, was too much. "We're ridiculous," Adaeze said. "Completely ridiculous," Min-jun agreed. That night he found her crying over her dissertation. The stress of everything. The immigration interview, the lies, the confusing feelings, the research that still wasn't quite right, had all crashed down at once. Min-jun didn't say anything, just sat beside her, pulled her into his arms, and let her cry into his expensive shirt. His hand rubbed circles on her back, his lips pressed against her hair, and Adaeze realized she felt safer in this fake husband's arms than she'd felt anywhere in years. "Tell me about your research," he said when her tears slowed. "Explain it to me like I'm 5. So she did. Talked about healthcare accessibility, about how systems failed poor communities, about mobile health clinics and telemedicine and policy changes that could save lives. He listened, really listened, asked questions that showed he understood not just the facts, but the passion behind them. "You're going to do this," he said when she finished. "You're going to change the world. And I'm going to be incredibly annoying and say, 'I knew her when' to everyone. You really think I can do this? Adaeze, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You moved to a foreign country alone. You're surviving on nothing while supporting your entire family. You married a stranger to chase your dreams. You defend me to drunk assholes at parties. Of course you can do this." She looked up at him. This man she'd married for money, and realized with sudden terrifying clarity that somewhere between the contract signing and now, she'd fallen completely in love with him. The realization must have shown on her face because his expression shifted, softened. His thumb brushed away a tear on her cheek. They were inches apart. His eyes dropped to her lips. "Adaeze," he whispered, and it sounded like a question. She answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was nothing like City Hall. This was real, desperate, months of tension exploding. Her hands fisted in his shirt, his fingers tangled in her hair. They kissed like they were drowning and each other was air, like they'd been waiting for this since the first moment they met, and finally stopped pretending they hadn't. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. "That was—" Adaeze couldn't finish. "A mistake," Min-jun said, but his hand was still cupping her face. "Right, a mistake. We got caught up in the moment. The stress, the practice, it's making us confused." Exactly. Confused, not actually feeling things. Definitely not feeling things. They stared at each other, lying badly, both knowing it. "We should probably not do that again," Adaeze said. "Definitely shouldn't," Min-jun agreed. They kissed again, deeper this time. Less desperate, more tender. His thumb traced her jawline. She sighed into his mouth. And neither of them could pretend this was practice or confusion or anything other than what it was. Real feelings that weren't supposed to exist. When they finally pulled apart, Min-jun rested his forehead against hers. "This is complicated. So complicated. The interview is tomorrow. We need to focus." "I know. After tomorrow, after we pass, we need to talk about this, about what's happening, about what we want." "Okay." But as they separated, returning to their respective sides of the bed, both knew the conversation they needed to have was the one they were most afraid of. Because somewhere between fake marriage and real life, they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. And tomorrow's interview would determine not just Min-jun's future in America, but the future of whatever this thing between them was becoming. Monday morning, they arrived at the immigration office at 7:45. Officer Martinez was waiting with another officer, a stern man who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. "Mr. and Mrs. Park, right on time. We'll be conducting separate interviews first. Mrs. Park, come with me. Mr. Park, Officer Chen will handle your interview." Adaeze's hand tightened on Min-jun's. He squeezed back. Then they were separated, led to different rooms, and the real test began. Officer Martinez's room was small, cold, designed to be uncomfortable. She gestured for Adaeze to sit, then spent a long minute just watching her, letting the silence build pressure. "Mrs. Park, how much is he paying you for this marriage?" The directness of it caught Adaeze off guard. "Excuse me? Your student loans were paid off in full the day after your wedding. $50,000. That's an interesting coincidence. So I'll ask again. How much is Min-jun Park paying you to pretend to be his wife?" Adaeze's heart hammered. They knew. They'd always known. This entire thing had been a trap from the beginning. "That was a wedding gift," she managed. "He knew I was struggling with debt. He wanted to help." "Convenient. Tell me, Mrs. Park, do you actually love your husband? Or do you love his money?" "I love him." "Say it like you mean it." "I love him." And this time, when she said it, she realized it was true. Completely, terrifyingly true. "Does he love you?" The pause lasted too long. The question she couldn't answer. Did he? The kisses felt real. The way he looked at her felt real. But he'd never said the words, never confirmed what any of this meant. "Yes," she said, hoping it wasn't a lie. "You don't sound certain." He's not demonstrative. He shows love through actions, through cooking me breakfast even though he hates mornings, Through learning about my research, even though public health has nothing to do with his business. Through paying for my grandmother's medication without being asked. Through making me feel less alone in a city that's been trying to break me for 5 years. He shows me he loves me every single day. He just doesn't say it. Officer Martinez made notes. If he got his green card today and you divorced tomorrow, would you regret it? Adaeze opened her mouth to give the answer they'd rehearsed, closed it, opened it again. Yes, I would regret it. Because somewhere between signing a contract and now, he became my favorite person, and losing him would hurt more than anything else I've survived in this city. That's quite an admission, Mrs. Park. It's the truth. And it was. Every word. In the other room, Min-jun sat across from Officer Chen, who was even more aggressive than Martinez. Why did you marry an African woman, Mr. Park? Specifically. Because she's brilliant. Because she makes me laugh. Because she cooks food that reminds me my mother existed and cared about me. Because she looks at me like I'm a person instead of a bank account or a business opportunity. Because she's kind to everyone, even people who don't deserve it. Because she makes me want to be less cynical about the world. That's a lovely speech. Is any of it true? All of it. Do you love her? Long pause. The question he'd been avoiding. The answer he wasn't sure he was allowed to give because it would complicate everything and make this real and give him something to lose that was worth more than any green card. Yes, I love her. I wasn't supposed to. This was supposed to be temporary, transactional, clean. But she burned my kitchen making jollof rice and laughed at herself instead of crying. She defends me to drunk assholes without being asked. She stays up until 2 a.m. working on research that will help people she'll never meet. She's everything good I'm not. And yes, Officer Chen, I love her. Is that what you wanted to hear? I wanted to hear the truth. And that sounded true. It is true. Which is inconvenient because if you deny my green card, I lose her either way. If I get deported, she stays here. If you approve the green card, our contract says we divorce and she gets her money and I get my documents and we both walk away. Either way, I lose her. So please, when you're deliberating, remember that I'm not trying to cheat the system. I'm trying to stay in the only place that's ever felt like home because the person who makes it home is here. Officer Chen studied him for a long moment. We'll reconvene with Officer Martinez and Mrs. Park. Wait here. When they were reunited in the waiting room 30 minutes later, both looked shaken. Officer Martinez and Officer Chen stood before them with identical, unreadable expressions. Your interviews were very revealing, Martinez said. Either you're both exceptional liars who rehearsed identical emotional breakdowns, or something genuine has developed between you. Based on our home visits, your separate interviews, and frankly the way you're looking at each other right now, we've made a decision. Adaeze reached for Min-jun's hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. Your petition is approved. Green card interview scheduled for 6 weeks from now. If nothing changes between now and then, Mr. Park will receive his permanent resident status. Congratulations. The relief was so intense, Adaeze felt dizzy. They'd done it. They'd won. But as they walked out of the building into the bright morning, the victory felt hollow. Because Officer Martinez was right. Something genuine had developed between them. And in 6 weeks, when Min-jun got his green card, their contract said this ended. She'd get her money. He'd get his freedom. And they'd both lose the thing that had somehow become more important than either. We need to talk, Min-jun said. I know. They went to a coffee shop, sat across from each other with untouched drinks between them, and finally acknowledged what they'd been avoiding. That was close, Adaeze started. Too close. They knew about the money. They probably suspect the whole thing. But they approved it anyway. Because of what we said in the interviews. Min-jun's hand reached across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. Adaeze, what did you tell them? The truth. That I love you. That losing you would break me. His breath caught. You said that? I meant it. I know I wasn't supposed to. I know this was supposed to stay clean and simple and transactional. But Min-jun, somewhere between fake marriage and real life, I fell in love with you. And I don't know what to do about it because in 6 weeks our contract ends and I'm supposed to take my money and leave and pretend none of this happened. What if we didn't pretend? His hand finally covered hers. What if we admitted this stopped being fake weeks ago? What are you saying? I'm saying I told Officer Chen I love you. I'm saying every rehearsed answer we practiced became true at some point, and I don't know when it happened, but I don't want it to unhappen. I'm saying that getting the green card means nothing if I lose you in the process. But the contract? Fuck the contract. I'll pay you the $50,000 anyway. You earned it. You saved my life just by being in it. But Adaeze, I don't want you to leave. I don't want this to end. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't want it to end either. Then let's not end it. Let's stay married. Not for immigration. For us. For real. That's insane. We barely know each other. I know you sleep diagonally and steal the covers. I know you sing off-key in the shower. I know you call your mother every Sunday at exactly 2 p.m. I know you stress clean when you're anxious. I know you're afraid of failing the people you love more than anything else. I know you better than I've ever known anyone. We started this marriage with a lie. Then let's start over. Right now, with truth. He stood, walked around the table, and got down on one knee right there in the coffee shop while other patrons stared. Adaeze Okafor, I'm in love with you. Real, terrifying, inconvenient love. Will you marry me? Again. For real this time. We're already married. That doesn't count. That was a contract. This is a choice. So I'm asking, will you choose me? Will you choose us? Will you choose this messy, complicated, started as a lie, love? She was crying and laughing, and people were definitely filming this, but she didn't care. Yes, 1,000 times, yes, I choose you. I choose us. I choose this ridiculous, beautiful disaster we created. He stood, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like he'd been wanting to kiss her since the moment they met. The coffee shop applauded. Someone whistled, and neither of them cared because finally, they'd stopped pretending. Subscribe right now if you're crying. Comment I knew it, if you saw this coming from the beginning. And hit that like button because we're not done yet. There's still an epilogue, and you need to see how this ends. 6 weeks later, Min-jun received his green card. The small plastic card that represented freedom, represented staying in the country he'd made his home, represented everything he'd risked Adaeze's safety and heart to obtain. They sat in their apartment, not his apartment anymore, theirs, and stared at it. So, Adaeze said, you got what you needed. I did. And I got what I needed. My tuition's paid. My degree's almost finished. We both got what we came for. Technically, yes. So we could call it even. Shake hands, part ways as friends. Min-jun set the green card down and turned to her. Is that what you want? You know it's not, but I needed to hear you say it wasn't what you wanted either. Adaeze, you're the best decision I never planned to make. You're the mistake that turned into my entire life. I don't want friends. I don't want even. I want you, every day, for as long as you'll let me keep you. She pulled him close, kissed him soft and slow, and whispered against his lips. Then I guess you're stuck with me. For real this time. 1 year later, they had a second wedding. A real wedding. Adaeze's mother and grandmother flew in from Nigeria, tears streaming down their faces, as they watched their daughter marry the Korean man who'd stolen her heart. Min-jun's extended family came from Korea, cousins and uncles and aunts who'd never understood why he left, but understood now, seeing the way he looked at Adaeze like she was his entire world. The ceremony was a fusion of cultures that would have made both their mothers proud. Adaeze wore traditional Nigerian attire for the first half, vibrant Ankara fabric in deep purples and gold, her head wrapped in gil that added 6 inches to her height and made her look like the Queen Min-jun swore she was. For the second half, she changed into a modified hanbok, the traditional Korean dress, in complementary colors that made Min-jun's eyes shine with unshed tears. Min-jun wore a perfectly tailored suit for the Nigerian ceremony, then changed into traditional Korean hanbok for his culture's portion. His cousins teased him mercilessly about how soft he'd gotten, how the cold businessman they remembered had transformed into someone who smiled freely and laughed often. "Marriage looks good on you," his cousin Ji-hoon said, clapping him on the back. "Or maybe it's just her. She's changed you." "She saved me," Min-jun corrected quietly, watching Adaeze across the room as she danced with her grandmother, both laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. "I was so focused on not becoming my father that I was becoming him anyway. Isolated, alone, convinced that keeping people at distance was strength. Then she showed up with her terrible singing and her burnt rice and her absolute refusal to let me hide. She saw me and stayed anyway." Kioma found Adaeze during a quiet moment between the celebrations. "So," she said with a knowing smile, "remember when I told you not to fall in love with him? I remember you saying I was safe because he had the emotional range of a tax form. I was so wrong. The way that man looks at you? Ada, he's completely gone, and you're just as bad." "I know." Adaeze watched Min-jun talking to her mother, his halting Igbo making Mama laugh as he tried to tell her how much he loved her daughter. He'd been taking language lessons for months, determined to communicate with Adaeze's family in their own tongue. "I wasn't supposed to fall for him. This was supposed to be simple. Nothing about love is simple. But you two," Kioma squeezed her hand, "you two are proof that sometimes the best things come from the worst plans." During the reception, Min-jun gave a speech that had half the room crying. He spoke in English, then repeated parts in Korean for his family, then attempted Igbo for Adaeze's family, making everyone laugh at his pronunciation while loving him for trying. "1 year ago," he said, "I married this woman for completely selfish reasons. I needed a green card. She needed money. It was supposed to be temporary, transactional, emotionless. But Adaeze doesn't do emotionless. She does everything with her whole heart. And somewhere between our fake wedding and today, she taught me how to do the same." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "You asked me once what I was afraid of. I told you I was afraid of becoming my father, alone, isolated, successful but empty. What I didn't tell you was that I was also afraid of becoming my mother. She loved so deeply, gave so completely, and when my father didn't return that love, it destroyed her. I was afraid that loving someone that much would destroy me too." His voice cracked. "But you taught me that love isn't destruction. It's construction. It's building something together. It's two broken people deciding to be whole together. You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness. It's the only real strength that matters. And Adaeze, I am so grateful that you needed money and I needed papers, because that brought you into my life. But I'm even more grateful that we were both brave enough to admit when it became real." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. "Last time I proposed, I made up a story about a ring you didn't have. About Brooklyn Bridge and sunset and recycled platinum because you hate conflict diamonds. But today, I'm making that story real." He opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum band, ethically sourced, engraved with both their initials in English and Korean. "Adaeze Okafor Park, will you stay married to me? Not for documents or money or anything except the fact that I love you and I choose you and I want to keep choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives. You know I'm already legally married to you, right?" Adaeze was crying and laughing at the same time. "This is technically redundant." "Then humor me. Say yes again." "Yes, always yes, forever yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and the room erupted in applause. They kissed like it was their first time and their 1,000th time all at once, like they were sealing a promise that had already been kept but needed to be said again anyway. Later, during the dancing, Adaeze's mother pulled Min-jun aside. She'd been crying on and off all day, overwhelmed by the fusion of cultures, the obvious love between her daughter and this Korean man she'd never imagined her child would marry. "Min-jun," she said in careful English, "I want to thank you." "For what, Mama?" He'd started calling her that naturally, and it made her cry again every time. "For loving my daughter the way she deserves to be loved, for seeing her worth, for fighting to keep her even when it would have been easier to let her go. She took his hand. When Ada called to tell me she'd married a stranger for money, I was so scared. I thought she'd sacrificed her heart for her education. But you gave her both. You gave her everything. That's all a mother can ask for her child. I'm the one who should thank you, Min-jun said, his own eyes wet. You raised a woman who's brilliant and kind and stubborn and brave. You raised someone who saved me without even trying. Whatever I give her, it will never be enough to repay what she's given me. Mama pulled him into a hug, this Korean son she'd never expected, and whispered, "You're family now. That means you're stuck with us, all of us, forever." "I can live with that," Min-jun whispered back. The party lasted until 3 in the morning. People from 2 continents, 2 cultures, 2 completely different worlds, all celebrating the union of 2 people who'd found each other in the strangest way possible. Nigerian jollof rice sat next to Korean bibimbap. Afrobeat music transitioned into K-pop. Languages mixed and blended until no one was quite sure what they were speaking and no one cared. And in the middle of it all, Adaeze and Min-jun danced, holding each other close, both marveling at how they'd gotten here. From a desperate meeting in a lawyer's office to this moment, surrounded by everyone they loved, celebrating a marriage that had started as fraud and become the most real thing in both their lives. "No regrets?" Min-jun asked, his lips against her ear. "About which part? The fake marriage? The immigration fraud? Falling in love with you? Any of it. Not one single regret. You. Only that I wasted so much time pretending I didn't love you. I should have admitted it the first time you made me jollof rice. That was week 3. We barely knew each other. I knew enough. I knew you hummed while you cooked. I knew you called your family, even when it made you cry, because staying connected mattered more than protecting yourself from pain. I knew you were brave enough to marry a stranger and kind enough to see past his walls. That was enough to love you for. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm 34. Ancient. I married an old man. You married a man who loves you more than his own life. Everything else is just details." She pulled back to look at him. "Say it again." "Which part?" "The part where you love me. I'll never get tired of hearing it. I love you, Adaeze. I loved you when I didn't want to. I loved you when I was afraid to. I love you now when it's easy, and I'll love you later when it's hard. I love you in English and Korean and my terrible Igbo. I love you in ways I don't have words for in any language. Is that enough times?" "Not even close. You have 50 more years to keep saying it." "Only 50. I was planning on at least 70. They kissed again, and somewhere in the crowd, Kiyoma and Jinwoo stood together watching them. "Remember when we set this up?" Kiyoma asked. "When it was just supposed to be a business arrangement?" "I knew it wouldn't work," Jinwoo said smugly. "Min-jun's terrible at staying emotionally distant. He pretends to be cold, but he's actually a disaster of feelings. And your friend? She's sunshine personified. There was no way they weren't falling in love. You couldn't have mentioned that before we committed fraud? Where's the fun in that? Besides, look at them. You can't tell me this wasn't worth it." Kiyoma watched her best friend dancing with her husband, both so obviously in love it hurt to look at, and had to admit Jinwoo was right. Some stories needed to start with bad decisions to end with perfect ones. 18 months after the second wedding, Adaeze defended her dissertation. Dr. Adaeze Okafor Park, she'd kept both names, refusing to erase either part of her identity, stood in front of a panel of professors and presented research that would reshape how mobile health clinics operated in underserved communities. Her work combined telemedicine, community health workers, and policy advocacy in ways no one had attempted before. Min-jun sat in the audience, having cleared his entire schedule to be there. He'd read every draft of her dissertation, asked questions that helped her refine her arguments, stayed up with her through countless late nights when she was sure she'd never finish. When she successfully defended and the panel congratulated Dr. Park, his applause was the loudest in the room. Afterward, in the hallway, She found him waiting with flowers and a smile that made her forget every stressed moment of the last 5 years. "Dr. Park," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you, I can't find words big enough. You helped me get here. You know that, right? I couldn't have finished without you. You would have found a way. You're unstoppable. But I'm honored I got to be part of your journey." That night, they celebrated with both families over video call. Her mother and grandmother in Nigeria, his cousins in Korea, all of them toasting Dr. Park and her achievement. The apartment that had started as his bachelor pad had transformed into their home, filled with both their belongings, their cultures, their dreams, mixing and merging until you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "What's next?" Min-jun asked after the calls ended and they were alone. "You've got your doctorate. You've published your research. The world is yours. What do you want?" "Honestly, I want to implement this. Turn theory into practice. Maybe start a nonprofit. Bring mobile clinics to areas that need them most. But that's huge and expensive and probably impossible." Or, Min-jun opened his laptop, pulled up documents he'd been working on in secret for months. "We start a foundation. Use some of my business profits to fund it. You run the operations, I handle the business side. We make this happen together. I've already talked to some investors. They're interested. We could have our first clinic operational within 6 months. Adaeze stared at the proposals, the budgets, the detailed plans. "You did all this? For my research? For our future. This matters to you, which means it matters to me. And honestly, I'm tired of just making money. I want to make a difference. You showed me how. Let me help you do this." She kissed him, deep and grateful and full of love. "Have I told you lately that I'm ridiculously in love with you? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. I'm ridiculously in love with you, even when you're being dramatic and secretly planning nonprofits without telling me. Especially when I'm doing that. That's peak husband behavior." 2 years after that, the Okafor Park Foundation opened its 5th mobile health clinic. They'd started in Nigeria, bringing healthcare to Adaeze's grandmother's village and surrounding communities, then expanded to other underserved areas across Africa and Asia. The model was working, combining traditional medicine with modern technology, respecting local cultures while providing world-class care. Min-jun had scaled back his consulting business to focus on the foundation. Turns out he was brilliant at nonprofit management, bringing the same strategic mind he'd used for corporations to the work of helping people. And watching Adaeze in her element, talking to patients, training community health workers, advocating for policy changes, made him fall in love with her all over again every single day. They were in Tanzania, visiting one of their clinics, when Adaeze started feeling sick. Nothing major, just nausea and fatigue that she blamed on travel and long hours. But when it persisted for 2 weeks, Min-jun dragged her to a doctor. The pregnancy test was positive. They sat in the Tanzanian clinic, one of theirs, built with their work and dreams, staring at the little plus sign that changed everything. "We never talked about kids," Adaeze said quietly. "We were so busy with everything else. We never discussed if we wanted them. Do you want them? I don't know. Maybe, someday. But not now. We're so busy with the foundation, and I'm finally doing this work I love and—" She stopped, seeing his face. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that 3 years ago, I married you for paperwork. I was so focused on what I needed that I didn't think about building a life together. But Adaeze, somewhere between then and now, you became my life. And the idea of a tiny human that's half you and half me, that's terrifying and incredible, and I want it. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. There's no pressure, but I wanted you to know I'm in, for all of it, forever." She took his hand, placed it over her still flat stomach. "Then I guess we're doing this, adding parents to our list of roles we're making up as we go. We've done pretty well making things up so far. That's because we're doing it together." 7 months later, they'd rushed back to New York for proper prenatal care. Adaeze gave birth to a daughter. They named her Amara, which meant grace in Igbo, and Jiwu, which meant wisdom in Korean. Amara Jiwoo Park, born into two cultures, two languages, two continents of family who loved her before she even existed. Min-jun held his daughter for the first time and cried like he hadn't cried since his mother died. This tiny person, this impossible combination of him and the woman he loved, felt like redemption, like proof that good things could come from complicated beginnings, like the universe's way of saying he'd done something right. "She's perfect," he whispered, kissing Amara's forehead while Adaeze watched from the hospital bed, exhausted and radiant. "She's absolutely perfect." "She has your nose," Adaeze observed. "She has your eyes, and probably your stubborn streak." "Good. She'll need it to deal with you." Their families descended within hours, Mama and Grandma flying in from Nigeria, Min-jun's cousins from Korea, Kyoma and Jin-woo, who'd become couple friends and were now the baby's honorary aunt and uncle. The hospital room filled with love in multiple languages, everyone cooing over Amara, everyone marveling at how much life could change in 3 years. 3 years ago," Adaeze told Kyoma while Min-jun showed Amara to his cousins, "I was broke, desperate, and willing to commit fraud for tuition money. Now look at me, married to the love of my life, running a foundation that's helping thousands of people, holding my daughter. How did I get this lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. You took a risk. You were brave. And you were smart enough to recognize real love when it showed up disguised as a business transaction. Best business transaction of my life. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Drop A in the comments and let me know what you thought. Was this the love story you wanted? And don't forget to subscribe, because there are so many more stories where this came from. 5 years after their fake wedding, 10 years after Amara was born, the Okafor Park Foundation was operating in 12 countries. Min-jun had been featured in Forbes for his innovative non-profit model. Adaeze had won humanitarian awards for her healthcare work. Their daughter was in school, speaking 3 languages fluently and asking why she couldn't learn a 4th. They'd bought a house in Brooklyn, not the penthouse anymore, but a brownstone with a yard where Amara could play, and rooms for visiting family and walls covered in artwork from both their cultures. It was chaotic and loud, and nothing like the sterile perfection of Min-jun's old apartment, and he loved every inch of it. One evening, while Amara was at a sleepover and they had the house to themselves for the first time in months, they found themselves in the kitchen. Adaeze was cooking jollof rice. She'd never stopped, even after everything changed, and Min-jun was setting the table, and the routine was so familiar, it felt like breathing. "Do you remember," Adaeze said, stirring the pot, "the first time I cooked for you? You looked so suspicious, like I might poison you." "I wasn't suspicious. I was overwhelmed. No one had cooked for me in 10 years. And then you did, this stranger I'd married for convenience. And it felt like coming home to something I didn't know I'd been missing. That's when I started falling for you. When you ate 3 helpings and pretended you weren't impressed. I was very impressed. I was also terrified because the contract said no emotional attachment, and I was already getting attached." She turned off the stove, faced him. "Do you ever regret it? How we started? The lies we told?" "Never. Not once. Yes, we started with a lie. But Adaeze, everything that came after was truth. The realest truth of my life. We built something beautiful on a flawed foundation, and that doesn't make the building less beautiful. It just makes the story more interesting." "Good answer. I've had years to practice." He pulled her close, swaying to music only they could hear. "Besides, if we hadn't started with that lie, we never would have started at all. You never would have answered Kyoma's crazy suggestion. I never would have taken a chance on a stranger. We needed the lie to find the truth." That's very philosophical for someone who claimed he had no emotional range. "You brought out all my emotions. Every single one. I didn't even know I had this many feelings until you showed up and demanded I feel them." They danced in their kitchen, in the house they'd built together, surrounded by the life they'd created. From fake marriage to real love to a family neither had planned but both treasured. It was messy and complicated, and nothing like either of them had imagined their lives would look. It was perfect. Min-jun? Yes, I'd marry you again. 1,000 times. I'd say yes to that lawyer's office meeting, yes to City Hall, yes to the second wedding, yes to all of it, every single complicated piece. Good. Because I'd ask you 1,000 times, I'd choose you in every timeline, every universe, every version of this story. You're the best decision I never planned to make. They kissed in the kitchen where they'd practiced fake affection that became real, where she'd taught him to cook, where they'd had their first real fight, and their first real conversation about feelings. The kitchen where their life together had really begun. And somewhere in the house, hanging on the wall, was their original marriage certificate from City Hall. Next to it, the marriage certificate from their real wedding. And next to that, a photo of the three of them, Adaeze, Min-jun, and Amara, all laughing at something outside the frame. Evidence of a love that started as fraud and became the truest thing either of them had ever known. Some love stories start with love at first sight. Some start with grand romantic gestures. Some start with fate and destiny and all the things poets write about. And some love stories start with a broke grad student, a desperate businessman, and a fake marriage that nobody believed would last 6 months. Those are the best stories, the ones that start wrong and end right. The ones that prove love doesn't care how it begins, only how it grows. This was one of those stories, and it was perfect. Thank you so much for reading this entire journey. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Should I make more stories like this? What kind of romance do you want to see next? Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more love stories that will make you laugh, cry, and believe in second chances. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best relationships start with the worst plans. Stay blessed, stay loved, and I'll see you in the next story.